What's up? Welcome into the LFC Transfer Room. I'm Jack, here today to talk about a bit of an analytical look at the last match in the Champions League against Real Madrid. A 3-1 loss in Madrid has Liverpool needing another Champions League comeback against the Spanish side in order to maintain their hopes of winning the Champions League again in Istanbul this season. So I'm going to take a look at some of the key moments, some of the most important events, and kind of how Liverpool should change and the problems they had in the last match against Real Madrid. As always, make sure to subscribe before we get into the video. Drop on some notifications, get notified when we drop a video or go live. We'll be going live before and after the Madrid match, so make sure to join us for that. Let's get into a bit of a look at Real Madrid. This first screenshot right here, I think, illustrates one of the big problems in the match. You see a midfield three that looks more like a diamond in kind of an inverted order. You see Vinicius Jr. is in a lot of space, not being marked by Keita, excuse me, who had been pushing forward to try and get on the counter for Liverpool. This leaves Trent Alexander-Arnold incredibly isolated, and he doesn't do himself any favors either by having himself waywardly positioned. This was ultimately changed by Klopp very quickly into the match, bringing off Keita within, I believe, 40 minutes for Thiago, a guy who has a bit better positional sense than Keita, at least in more recent matches. I'm a huge Keita fan. I think he's one of the better players at Liverpool when he's in form and when he's fit. Issue is he hasn't been fit for a long time, and he hasn't been in form for a while either. So it was a bad choice by Klopp to have Keita in the midfield, and it really hurt them in terms of their positional sense, and it allowed far more exposed Trent Alexander-Arnold. Didn't do any favors for himself with his errors he made, but he was more exposed than he usually was. This right here, I think we'll hit a bit more on Trent Alexander-Arnold, is he was beaten one-on-one very, very often by Furlan Mendy. And this is something that I think is probably going to be very frustrating for him to watch and look back on, is that he was unable to kind of win that individual battle. And that kind of led to Nat Phillips and Ozan Kabak getting pinned one-on-one very often by some of the other Real Madrid forwards, which is something that they're going to definitely want to avoid in this second leg. So I think one of the big keys for Liverpool is Trent, at the very least, don't have any glaring errors that will have him trending on Twitter. He doesn't make as many defensive lapses as you would think, given how often he's talked about for his poor defensive work, but he needs to step it up. And I think that he needs to be able to at least be a bit better in these one-on-ones. He's actually one of the better one-on-one tacklers in the entire Premier League, but he needs to do it in this big match tomorrow in order to come out on top. So there's two segments to this first goal for Real Madrid. This first part is Toni Kroos. Diogo Jota not even looking at man on the ball, Toni Kroos, Sadio Mane kind of just standing there. Just a real lack of urgency in the press. And Toni Kroos is one of the best passers of the football in the entire world. And he's going to ping a 40-50 yard pass to pick out Vinicius Jr. And you look at this high line, it's on the edge of this first change in the grass color in the inside of their own half for Liverpool. Ozan Kabak and Nat Phillips are not blessed for pace. Having them isolated one-on-one with Vinicius Jr., even Karim Benzema, Asensio, is a recipe for disaster. And it was right here. Obviously, we see that Vinicius got in one-on-one, had a really good opportunity to try and bury one, and Alisson, you can't really blame him too much for not being able to save this one. That one just put underneath him. And Liverpool, obviously, going down 1-0 fairly early in the match within half an hour. But again, this is a product of two things. Liverpool do not have their first choice center backs, so you can't try and pretend like they're going to be the same players that they are. If you were to have Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Joel Matip, even Fabinho back there when he was back there at times, these guys are not as quick. You need to at least do a better job of closing down and pressing and not allowing the glaring amount of space that existed for this first goal. So right here, I think, is another product of just a lack of pressing effectively from Liverpool. We see Karim Benzema isolates Ozan Kabak one-on-one in the channels. He moves into the channels tremendously, and with Robertson and Alexander-Arnold pushing upwards, it was going to always isolate them. And Kabak is okay in these situations. He's held his own, but it's not something that if you're Jurgen Klopp, you're not really comfortable seeing Kabak in these kinds of positions. So I think a big key is going to be you have to get, I think, a bit more work in the press to avoid the situations. Liverpool are going to play a high line. They're going to play attacking, especially if they need to come back from 2 goals down, but you need to try and at least force them to be more uncomfortable and stop them from just playing their own game. This situation won't be completely avoided, but it happened far too often, and I wanted to highlight one instance that it happened in. So right here again, the second goal of the match for Asensio, it was fundamentally a terrible mistake by Trent Alexander-Arnold that caused the goal to be scored. But again, we see Toni Kroos allowed time to look up, pick out a pass because of a lack of pressing. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be vigilant and always closing down. It takes a lot of energy to close down. But don't let Toni Kroos, one of the literal best passers in the entire world, have this much time and space. Close him down more effectively in the second leg, because he picks out a pass over the top, Trent makes a mistake, and Asensio goes in one-on-one. And right here, you probably could blame Trent for the man sitting down. You could blame Alisson for not being convicted enough. You could blame just Liverpool. There were a mess of errors on this goal, and it led to one of the best chances of the game for Asensio. A nice flick over the head of Alisson, and then just tapped it in for one of the easiest goals he'll score in his life. One last thing I'll hit on in this first half was Ozan Kabak. Two things. I can't show video, but he looks very funny when he runs. I love Ozan, but he's not blessed with rapid pace. And Liverpool having to force him to run into these channels very often led to problems. In this instance, he played a bad pass backwards, and it gave Asensio a one-on-one with Alisson, which he missed. So Liverpool were rather fortunate not to go down 3-0 going into the break. So a lot of need for improvement from that first half. A bit happened, and we'll talk about one aspect right here. So right here we see Gini Wijnaldum running with the ball, driving forward. Doesn't do this as often as he should, but in this instance he took on 2-3 Madrid defenders, pushed the ball forward, and took what was a 7-on-4 situation, and basically took 3 defenders out of the match. Ended up creating the chance for Jota. His shot was blocked. Salah got the rebound, and Liverpool scored. One of the few moments of positivity from the game for Liverpool, and the literal only positive heading into the second leg is that rather than the 3-0 that you were down against Barcelona back in 2019, you're only down 3-1, and a 2-0 win would put you through, but you need to score 2 goals, and this was one of the only moments when it seemed like it would happen. Wijnaldum, if he's again captain against Madrid, he needs to do more moments of these, and less of the other moments we're going to talk about in a second. So this is a static picture. If I showed you the entire video, Gini Wijnaldum would not have moved when the ball was thrown into Benzema. He passes it back, the ball is eventually put into the box, and Vinicius scores and finishes. It was embarrassing positionally, because there was a player just a few yards away from him in the box, dribbling in there, and his mind was elsewhere. I don't know how else you describe it. He was just standing in the exact same spot, not moving, and he probably could have closed down the passing lane of Vinicius Jr. if he was a bit more adamant in the game. Can you blame that entirely on Wijnaldum? No, but there's a lot of faults in that first match, and I think this was one of many. Liverpool made a serious amount of errors in that match against Madrid, which offered them far too much space to get one-on-one with their defenders and offered far too many chances. And Liverpool, frankly, are lucky to only be down 3-1 headed into the second leg. Things that need to change: increased amount of pressing, more urgency, and more of a proactive Gini Wijnaldum. And I think what we need also is clinical finishing from Sadio Mane. He has gotten several chances in recent weeks, especially in the Villa match, very late on. If he misses a chance like that against Madrid, it could come back to bite Liverpool. Do they have a chance? Of course. It's Liverpool Football Club. They're always going to have a chance. But they're going to need to score 2 goals at Anfield. They did that on the weekend, so they could do it again, obviously, against Madrid. But we're going to need another European comeback if we want the dream of number 7 in Istanbul to stay alive. Let me know your thoughts ahead of the match, your score predictions, your thoughts, your fears, what you want to see Liverpool do, and maybe a projected lineup or 2 of what you would like to see against Madrid. But that's going to do it for today's video. We're going to be live before and after the match, as I mentioned, on the LFC Transfer Room YouTube page, 7 p.m. UK time, pre-match around 10 p.m. UK time for the post-match, basically when full-time happens there. So, as always, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our content, and for myself, Jack, this has been the LFC Transfer Room. Take care.